have a false unity in the middle, so everybody just pretends to get along.
We have made some progress figuring out some of the settings for where our story is taking place. And in today's spoiler video, we're going to discuss a little bit about what those are and how we came to the decision that this is the type of setting we want for our story. So you're the one that did most of the brain work, legwork, coming up with some of these settings here. So what went into that process of deciding to write that down?
Well, I was trying to write down what one of our main characters was thinking, and in order to do that, I had to think from two different timelines perspectives, because there's conversation crossing timelines. And just a reminder, today is a spoiler video, so we're talking about settings. We're going to go into some of the detail. So if you don't want spoilers for our story, you know what to do. Hit next. But the settings that I ended up focusing on, really the part one and the part two settings. The thing that I came up with for part one, and this is just a real specific, part one is what happens in current day time. So that's our placeholder is it's 2026. That was originally the date that we thought maybe we'd end up publishing. That might have to change, but for lack of a better time, it was 2026 is when part one starts. And I had been setting it right here where we live, but some of the details of where we live weren't quite fitting the way I wanted the story to work. So instead, I ended up setting the story in Oarsville, Georgia, which is actually in the northern part of the county where we live, but it doesn't exist anymore. It's a city that used to exist, but it ended up fading out, and it ended up dying in the late 1800s. But I chose to write it there so that it would give the impression that somebody will have already gone back in time and made some change to the past, what will have already been past, so that by the time we're writing, it's already a different version of history than what we're living in. Excuse me. And that gives us the freedom and the flexibility to use what works from today, so we can put in little Easter eggs. Hey, I know that place. Mm-hmm. But yet we can change things so that it's not quite the same. It also gives us the ability someday, if we want to write further stories about what exactly happened. Why did somebody change the even further past?
Our second book, The Saving of Oarsville.
Because it's such an important thing.
Oh, yes. But I think part of what that does as well is there's the writing advice. Write what's familiar to you. And the fact that we can set it in our county, in an area that we know how the community works, all those different types of things, that makes it a little bit easier to make a realistic story, setting it somewhere that we're familiar with, even if it doesn't actually exist. Mm-hmm. And then you also did some work looking at the far future and what society is going to be like then. And that yielded some interesting results.
So that one, there were a couple of things all working together towards that. One is, given what we know about today's society, if we were to just project forward, what is a likely possible outcome for what society might be like then? Secondly, what do we need society to be like so that our story will fit?
Yes.
So where that ended up was that, so part two of the story takes place in, I think it's around 2040 is when it starts. Part two goes from 2040 to like 2067 or 2060 late. And what we have right now is that at the beginning of that time period, people tend to be very closed with their opinions. They don't share them very strongly. The history in the gap between the two parts that our main characters skip over by jumping to the future is that two of the presidents in that range had both been assassinated by people who were really against some things that they stood for, because the polls, the polarizing aspect of our political culture had just gotten stronger and stronger on the ends, and they had enforced rules on one extreme or the other, and both sides had been had faced violence as a result. And the reaction of the country was for everybody to stop revealing their polarizing views and to have a false unity in the middle. So everybody just pretends to get along.
Mhm.
And that shows up in a massive deregulation from the industry. And that's what allows some of the carelessness, if you will, of our scientific community to occur, which then triggers the need for the Knowledge Acceleration Board, the rest of the storyline that we had put together. So that's really what all fit into there.
Very much a lot of detail that probably won't get explicitly explained in the book. There were some other details as well that we brainstormed back and forth that way too much to go into here. But the fact that we can create a somewhat realistic feeling world, even if not all of those details make it into the book, the fact that we have them help us to create a more consistent world for our story to live in. And so, like you said, the Knowledge Acceleration Board, the fact that some of our scientists in the future are doing questionable things that in today's world probably wouldn't really have been allowed, but the fact that people are taking a little bit more hands-off approach in the future because of all these things allows some of this carelessness to happen. And so that creates a world in which these things can be realistic.
One of the other things that I just remembered is also that one of our main characters, Vanessa, has, when we look at the differences between Vanessa and Arnold, our two main characters we've been focusing on so far, one of Vanessa's issues is that she struggles to belong, and part of how she has adapted is that in every condition she finds herself in, she becomes a chameleon and is able to masquerade as a member so that she can feel like she fits in, whereas Arnold has been more prone to just speak his mind. And that also supports the direction of the character growth that we had envisioned for part 4, where Vanessa naturally tends to succeed and Arnold tends to struggle and resents people for his struggles.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the macro world building that supports the story building that we are trying to do, we think that that's going to be helpful in allowing us to place our writing in a setting that we're familiar with and we know a little bit more of the details about. And we've explained a little bit of why we have chosen the settings that we have. So our question for you, if you're a writer, how do you go about choosing what type of setting to write your story in? Let us know in the comments, and we will see you in a couple weeks.